Tom, thanks very much for joining us here at MIPIM. It would be good to get your sense, I think, just on some of the kind of key trends in terms of the European logistics space.
Yeah. So, key trends, I think it's about rental growth, and I think it's about the ongoing demand for space from occupiers, which is leading to the rental growth. I also think a lot of investment managers, and actually some agents, are still underestimating quite how significant all of the growth is going to be. I think there's been a bit of a culture in continental Europe in the last 10, 15 plus years of seeing little to no rental growth per annum. Or, at best, people then assuming that it will be around inflation. And I think people have been looking at rental growth from a sort of econometric perspective. What I think we're seeing now in the market is a huge structural undersupply of space. And I think the value of warehouses to businesses, to occupiers, is significantly more linked to their ebitda growth than it used to be. So I think people are missing the point if they're sort of thinking it'll be sort of 4 or 5 max% rental growth. I think it could be significantly more, the likes of which Europe has never seen. I'm not suggesting that will happen everywhere, and I'm not suggesting it will happen every year. I think it will be a bit jagged in its growth, and I think it will happen in different countries at different times. But if you look to what's been going on in the US in the last few years, they've had huge rental growth, 10, 15, 20% plus in different markets. And to put it into perspective, the US has got a significantly higher amount of warehouse space per capita than continental Europe. So continental Europe not only has to catch up from an e-commerce perspective, but there isn't the warehouse space that's going to satisfy that demand. So logic and maths would suggest there will be a lot of rental growth to come.
And in terms of, I suppose, the investment outlook, where are you seeing some of the sort of key opportunities, I guess, in the European space?
I think you can go into a lot of areas. I think it depends what your strategy is. So I think if you really want to get the highest returns, I think development. I think aggregating small assets is another really good game plan. I think urban areas and around urban areas, you're going to get, as mentioned, good rental growth. I also think what used to be considered secondary or smaller towns and cities all across Europe are going to see some huge performance, because these towns and cities of 100, 200, 300,000, whilst they're relatively small, they need logistics to service their population from an e-commerce and just a general business perspective. They don't have much warehousing. A lot of developers aren't building there. So I actually think you're going to see a lot of outperformance in those smaller towns and cities all over Europe. So that's at a sort of regional level. I think then at a country level, you're going to see, or we are seeing, an expansion of investor and occupier demand from what used to be the UK, the France and the Germanys, the big economies. It's now, now last year we're seeing phenomenal interest going into countries like Denmark, all the way up into the Nordics, Portugal, for example, and a lot of other slightly more peripheral markets around Europe. They need logistics. They have high occupier demand, and I think you're going to get some very good performance there as well.
Great, really interested to catch up. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Thanks, Richard. Cheers.